Hello and welcome, I'm Flavia and I'm glad you stopped by. In today's video, I will create a few cards using the Spellbinders Build a Fall Birdhouse and the Sweet Birds on a Branch die sets. It involves a lot of die cutting, which I love, and I will show you how we can quickly and easily add color to our die cut pieces. Here we have the two die sets. On the left is the Build a Fall Birdhouse. It comes with plates to cut out a birdhouse, flowers, pumpkins, leaves, and acorns. And on the right, we have the Sweet Birds on a Branch die set with lots of super cute birds. The Build a Fall Birdhouse die set is actually part of a Spellbinders collection by Vicky Papayuano. There is one birdhouse set for each season in this collection, and they are so much fun to use. I got all 4 sets because they come with many great elements, and I love to mix and match die plates from different sets and even from different companies to create new designs. I will start by die cutting lots of these pieces at once. Since I have a lot of white cardstock scraps, I will die cut all of these pieces in white, and later I will add color to these die cuts. I have a quick and easy way to do that, and I think you're going to like it. I am definitely cutting more than I need, but that is so I can have leftovers ready to go the next time I need to make a card. Small die plates like this are great for using your leftover pieces of cardstock. When I get a new set of dies, I actually die cut lots of pieces at once without any card design in mind, and that is why I prefer using white cardstock. By using white cardstock, I will be able to make it any color I want later by either coloring, painting, or ink blending over these pieces. Whereas if I were to cut out lots of this birdhouse in brown, for example, in advance just to save me some time, and then later I decided that I actually want or need a green birdhouse instead, all of this work would have been for nothing because I would have to die cut another house again using green cardstock. So when die cutting in advance just to save time, I think that using white cardstock is the safest option because you can change it to make any color you want later. Here are all of the die cuts that we get in this set. These metal plates not only cut out your cardstock, but it also leaves impressions on it, adding really beautiful details to each die cut piece. Here is a closer look at some of these pieces. Notice all of the wood grain and tiny hearts impressions on this birdhouse. It is very beautiful, and I think that small details like this make all the difference. I have the Gemini Junior die cut machine, and that is what I use to cut out all of these pieces off camera. Most of my white cardstock leftover pieces are heavyweight, and these plates cut beautifully. To add color to these pieces, we will need a gel press, a brayer, and ink pads. I like to use a gel press for this technique because it is kind of sticky, so the tiny die cut pieces will stay in place and not flip over when I run the brayer over them. I'm using a small brayer, but you can use any size of brayer you have. The bigger the brayer, the more die cuts you will be able to cover at once. I'm using Altenew Crisp die inks because I love the colors, and I collect the mini ink cubes because they come in sets of 4 different shades of the same color, which is perfect for layered stamping, and they are less expensive than the regular size pads and perfect to take it to go. I will start by applying some ink directly to my gel press and then go over it with my brayer to pick up the ink. I will roll my brayer back and forth a few times to make sure the ink is spread out evenly. Then I will run it over the die cut pieces that I placed on my gel press. Because the die plates left those impressions on the cardstock, when I roll my brayer over the die cut pieces, those sections will stay white and we will only get ink on the raised sections. So we will end up with a brown house with white details, which I think is very nice. To get this effect, you have to be very light-handed when rolling the brayer over the die cuts. However, if you do not like the white details, you can continue to add ink with the brayer until the die cut piece is completely covered. And the nice thing is that you will end up with a house with two tones of the color that you chose. This is just a matter of preference, and I love the result that we can get either way. Here is a closer look at the two houses that I created. For the one on the left, I was very light-handed, so the ink did not get through the engraved sections on the cardstock. For the house on the right, I was very heavy-handed with the brayer, and I ran it over the die-cut piece a couple of times until it was completely covered. Because the raised sections on the cardstock ends up getting more ink than the engraved sections, you will end up with two tones of the ink color that you chose, and I think that is really nice. You can also add more ink in some areas than the others to create some shading. I'm using the espresso ink color for this last birdhouse, and I applied more of that same color of ink on the top and bottom to make it darker. For the center of the flower pieces, I'm using Autumnal ink in the color Citrus Burst. For some of the leaves, I will use green ink in the colors Firefly and Grass Field. And I will also add two colors to some of the leaves by covering one half in green and the other half in orange. This beautiful and bright orange ink that I'm applying to these other leaves is the Autumn Blaze. I will also make some of these fall leaves bright yellow by using the color Honey Duffel. I actually meant to add colors to the windows and the pieces of wood die cuts together with the houses, but I forgot, and that is why I'm doing them separately. This really is an easy and fun way to add color to your die cuts, and if you have a gel press and a brayer, I hope you give it a try. It is very cool to kind of bring these white die cut pieces back to life by applying these beautiful and bright colors. I'm very glad that this allowed me to use my leftover pieces of cardstock because, like many card makers, I do have lots of it, and this is definitely a great way to use them up. I have only tried this technique with dye inks and distress oxide inks, and they work great. I can't really keep track of all the ink pads that I'm using today because I'm really going out of town here and mixing and matching so many colors, but I will have in the description below a link to my blog where you can find more information and a supply list of all products used, including the Autumnal mini ink cube sets used today. Before switching colors, I always clean up my gel press and brayer by placing a scratch paper on top of my gel press, and then I run my brayer over the paper back and forth so the ink on the brayer and the ink on the gel press is transferred to this scratch paper. Sometimes when you do this to clean up your gel press, you get really nice impressions on your paper, and that is why I decided for this last batch to use a piece of white cardstock to clean up my gel press. Since I placed so many small leaves on my gel press to ink them all at once, check out the cool impression that I get as I peel this cardstock out of my gel press. I think this is so cool and a great way to not let your ink go to waste. I will definitely trim this off and use it as a background panel. Speaking of panels, now that I have the die cuts ready, I will add some gold accents to each one of my panels by using my Glimmer hot foil machine. I will make 3 cards today and they will be mini slimline cards. Off camera, I turned my Glimmer hot foil system on, and while I'm waiting for this machine to get hot, I will trim some gold foil pieces using my quick trimmer so I can easily cut these pieces to size and avoid waste. I like to tape the metal plate to my cardstock first to create a hinge and then place the foil between the plate and the cardstock, making sure that the golden side is touching the plate. If the golden side would be touching or facing the cardstock, the foil would end up being transferred to the metal plate and not the cardstock, and we do not want that. When foiling, always remember that the pretty side, and by that I mean the color that you want, should be touching or facing the metal plate. Here is the glimmer machine. Once the platform is hot enough, a second light will turn on green. That means I can go ahead and add my cardstock on top with the plate touching the platform because we need the metal plate to get hot. Then I will add these two plates that came with the Glimmer Hot Foil system and press this white button to set the timer. This second light that is flashing is our timer. Once it stops flashing, it means it's ready and I can go ahead and remove this entire platform. Then I will run all of this through my die cut machine to add pressure so the foil is transferred to my cardstock. It is very common for overfoiling to happen, at least with me, but that is not a problem. We can easily remove the overfoiling sections with a sand eraser. Here are the 3 panels with golden foil accents. I love the result that we get with foiling. This white and green panel is a piece from that cardstock with the impression that I got from cleaning up my brayer. I had to trim each panel very close to the foiled borders because it wasn't straight, which led me to create my own slimline size card. I'm using heavyweight white cardstock for the base of these cards that measures 6.5 by 7 inches. I will score this in half to create my mini slimline card base that measures 6.5 inches long by 3.5 inches wide. Before we move on to the fun and exciting part of putting these pieces together, let me show you these sweet little birds that I die cut. I used a leftover piece of an ink blended cardstock to cut them out, and these are the pieces that you get. It involves a little bit of assembling, like adhering the wings and the belly. Here is a closer look at these birdies. They are very cute. When I first got this set, I die cut lots of birds in many different colors, and I keep them sorted out in a tray because I think that they are perfect to make cards for any occasion. The sentiment for these cards are also going to be die cuts. I chose the words blessed and thankful. These word dies are also from Spellbinders. I will stack 4 white die cuts of each word for dimension, and then I will top with a golden mirror cardstock. If you happen to get liquid adhesive on top of your metallic cardstock, do not try to scrape it off with your fingernails because you may end up scratching it. What I prefer to do is to wipe it off with a dry cloth until the adhesive is gone. As you can see on the top of the screen, I have all of my die cut pieces sorted out, and I am ready to start creating the scenes for my birdhouse cards. I thought that it would be a good idea to have a surprise window for these cards, so when it is closed, you can only see the head of the bird peeking out through the window, and then when you open the card, the bird is actually inside with a few other die cut elements. To do that, I will use a circle die that is big enough to cut a circle around the birdhouse window. Any circle die will work as long as it is not bigger than the birdhouse. I'm tracing the shape of the window on my front panel so I know exactly where to place the circle die. I will run this through my die cut machine and repeat the process on the card base. To make sure I die cut the circle out of my card base in the same place as I did on my front panel, I will center my front panel on top of my card base exactly where I plan on adhering it later. Then I will place the circle die back on top of my panel where we just die cut. When you do this, you will feel that the die fits like a puzzle. Now I can open my slimline card base, so when I run it through my die cut machine, I will only cut out a circle at the front. For the first card, I wanted to have a pink border to match the pink flower that I plan on using. Instead of adding a pink cardstock, I will just add ink to the front of my card base. In order to not waste my ink, I will only do this to the sections that will show. Now I can adhere the front panel and then the birdhouse to the card base, making sure to line up the circles. Now I will play around with the colorful die cut pieces a bit by placing them in different areas to see what I like best. That means none of the pieces have adhesive in the back. I will only add liquid adhesive once I know for sure where I want each piece to go. I decided that two cards will have the word bless adhered to the birdhouse at the bottom since it has almost the same width, and I will have one card with the word thankful on a diagonal because the die cut word is too long for this mini slimline card. Even though I ink blended the center of the flowers and the top of the acorns, I also die cut these sections using that same mirror golden cardstock just so I could have some more golden details in each card. I was planning on using those birdies that I assembled earlier, but their colors were just too light for these cards. Thankfully, I already had this tray full of birds, and I think I will go with the bright ones so they stand out from the inside of the house when the card is closed. As I opened this card, I noticed that the ink bled through the inside of this card. That happened because I didn't use heavyweight cardstock for this card base. I did that by accident and it was very disappointed when I opened this card, but I will cover these sections with the stains on the borders using some of these die cut pieces, which actually turned out to be very cool because this card will have lots of surprise inside. To make the eye on this bird, I will use black Nuvo Drop. Moving on to the next card, I will make sure that the base is heavyweight cardstock. Just like I did before, I will add color to the border of this card base at the front using an orange ink pad. As you can see, the ink did not bleed at all. I will also add some die cut pieces inside, but not as many as on the previous card. I chose orange for the border so it will match the pumpkins that I was planning on adding to this panel. I am again playing around with these pieces and I will only add liquid adhesive once I'm sure I like the placement. I'm using the Barley Arts glue since it is a strong glue that doesn't dry too fast, allowing me to lift up these pieces if I need to tuck another one in. When working with small die cuts, I like to use a pair of tweezers to hold the pieces so my hand doesn't get in the way and it is easier for me to see exactly where I'm placing it. The die plate that I used to cut out the branches that I am adhering to the inside of these cards came with the Sweet Birds on a Branch die set. This last slimline card with the white and green panel will have the sentiment thankful. I chose not to add ink to the border of this one because unlike the other two cards, this one has a colorful panel. I was considering adding die cut leaves all around this front panel, but I ended up changing my mind and I am only adding die cut pieces at the bottom just like I did on the previous two cards. I will also place another bird outside the house over the word thankful. To make envelopes for these mini slimline cards, I am actually using 8 size envelopes. As you can see, they are just too big, so I will trim about an inch from each end to customize it. To make the envelope match the cards, I will also add some of the die cut pieces to the flap of each envelope. This is an extra step, but I think it makes all the difference. I think that making the envelope match the card is just as important as wrapping a gift. It has to be just as beautiful as what it is inside, at least for me. And with an envelope like this, the recipient will definitely know without opening it that this is not a bill or junk mail. So anyways, these were all of the cards that I have to share with you today. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did creating these cards. As I show you the final mini slimline cards with its matching envelopes, I hope you feel inspired to create by mixing and matching the small die plates that you already have to create new scenes and use up your leftover pieces of cardstock. For more information and pictures of these cards, make sure to visit my blog. I also have a Pinterest and Instagram page where I share pictures of the cards that I make, and I would love to have you there. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you do not miss the next one. I hope you have a wonderful week and until next time.